Hello. All right, cool. So I just want to talk for a few minutes about this. First of all, before we kind of get into it, I want to know what your guys' thoughts are on Fortunato, who is, of course, our unfortunate friend who ends up getting killed, and then Montresor, who is our seemingly protagonist, if you will, even though he's a little bit crazy. Okay, so initial thoughts on Fortunato and Montresor.
Montresor is a
Well written.
What?
Well written.
It's definitely well written. Pose no slouch. You said Montresor's a psycho?
Yeah, I really want to know what Fortunato did to make him mad.
Yeah.
It was probably some itty bitty, and he was like, "My family says if you hurt me, I hurt you," and he just took it way too far.
Yeah, all we know is we don't know what. We know how many, right? According to him, first line 1,000 times, which is probably an exaggeration, but
right.
Definitely lets us know that over and over and over. It's like when someone calls you something that they think you're cool with, but actually you're not, and in their mind, it's just like, hey, man, yeah, I'm just joking with Cujo, but
Right.
It's like, oh, every time he says that, nervous tick.
Yeah, but
right?
But then nobody says anything. So I think that might happen here. Is like every time he sees him, he says something, but
Yeah.
he doesn't know it bothers him, and just one day he just flips out.
Yep, cool. All right, so is everybody there on the story? Let's go down to just like the second paragraph. It says, "It must be understood that neither by word nor deed had I given Fortunato cause to doubt my goodwill. I continued, as was my wont, to smile in his face, and he did not perceive that my smile now was the thought of his immolation." Basically meaning that I'm definitely going to kill this guy, but I'm going to smile on his face so he has no clue, and so no one else would suspect me either. This is the reason I think that Montresor is a sociopath. I mean, he's a crazy person, right? This is definitely premeditated. I'm definitely going to take this guy out. Let's keep reading. It says, "He had a weak point, this Fortunato, although in other regards he was a man to be respected and even feared. He prided himself..." Nice. Sorry, got a text. "He prided himself on his connoisseurship in wine. Few Italians have the true virtuoso spirit. For the most part, their enthusiasm is adopted to suit the time and the opportunity, to practice imposture upon the British and Austrian millionaires, in painting and gemmology. Fortunato, like his countrymen, was a quack, but in the matter of old wines, he was very sincere. In this respect, I did not differ from him materially. I was skillful in the Italian vintages myself, and bought largely whenever I could." So basically he's saying Fortunato sucks, but he does know his wine. So I'll give him props on that. And he uses his fine taste in wine to lure him into the catacombs. Hey, I've got the Amontillado. And then that's like a really expensive wine. It's actually a brandy drink, I think. But and Fortunato says, "No, you don't have any Amontillado." Montresor's like, "Yes, I do. You got to come try it." Okay, you guys tell me if you know, who is Lucchese? That's our third character in this story. Who's Lucchese? You guys remember? Okay, cool. So Lucchese is another wine guy.
Oh, is he the guy that they were talking about? He wouldn't know the difference between.
Yes. Okay, so that's another way that he gets Fortunato into the catacombs is Fortunato's like, "No, I'm not coming." And then Montresor says, "Okay, fine, I'll call Lucchese." So it's kind of like he's using Fortunato's pride against him. So for example, if, let's say, I'm a super, super insecure guy, okay? And Trevor comes up to me and he's like, "Hey, can you help me with my paper?" And I'm like, "Nah, I'm busy." And then Trev goes, "That's fine, I'll ask Coach Hardy to help me." But I'm like,
immediately,
"I'll help you.
Yeah.
You don't need Coach Hardy. I'm better than he is at papers," right? Mm-hmm. That's basically what's happening here with Lucchese. Is Montresor is using Lucchese and using Fortunato's pride against him. Okay, let's go down to page 5. Okay. The second paragraph, this tells us a lot about Montresor. It says, there were no attendants at home, meaning none of his servants were at home. They had absconded to make merry in honor of the time. I had told them that I should not return until the morning, and had given them explicit orders not to stir from the house. These orders were sufficient, I well knew, to ensure their immediate disappearance, one and all, as soon as my back was turned. So he told his workers, do not leave the house. I'll be back in the morning. And as soon as he left, they all dipped out. What does that tell us about Montresor and the way that he's viewed by his workers?
He's probably like a dictatorship and no one really likes him.
They hate him, right? So that gives us some insight into Montresor, who says, Fortunato's hurt me 1,000 times. Okay, so now we're kind of getting a different vantage point. We're seeing that maybe Montresor's word is not always truthful because his workers hate him. So that kind of gives us, maybe we believe Fortunato is just a nice old fool, right? And maybe Montresor's actually wrongfully doing this to him. Okay, cool. Let's get down to page 6. We talked about this a little bit yesterday. About halfway down, it says, here I knocked off the neck of a bottle, which I drew from a long row. Basically, they're in their catacombs, and he grabs a bottle to drink, he and Fortunato. Drink, I said, presenting him the wine. He raised it to his lips with a leer. He paused and nodded to me while his bells jingled. I drink, he said, to the buried that repose around us, meaning I drink to the dead. And then Montresor says, and I drink to your long life. Why is that ironic?
Because he doesn't have very long.
He's about to kill him. I love Poe. He's so good. He again took my arm and we proceeded. These vaults, he said, are extensive. The Montresors, I replied, were a great and numerous family. I forget your arms. A huge human foot in a field, the foot crushes a serpent rampant whose fangs are embedded in the heel. And the motto, Nemo me impune lacit. Good, he said. The wine sparkled in his eyes and the bells jingled. My own fancy grew warm with the Medoc. That's the drink that they're drinking. We had passed through the walls of piled bones with casks and puncheons intermingling into the inmost recesses of the catacombs. I paused again, and this time I made bold seize Fortunato by an arm above the elbow. The nitre, I said, see, it increases. It hangs like moss upon the vault. So it's basically like mold. We are below the river's bed. The drops of moisture trickle among the bones. Come, we will go back. It is too late. Your cough. It is nothing, he said. Let us go on. But first, another drink of the Medoc. Okay. Okay, this is really important. I broke and reached him a flagon of de Grave. He emptied it at a breath. His eyes flashed with a fierce light. He laughed and threw the bottle upward with a gesticulation I did not understand. So basically, Fortunato makes a movement. And there's a video I'll show you guys that shows you kind of the movement. Okay, and then we find out what that movement means. I looked at him in surprise. He repeated the movement, a grotesque one. You do not comprehend, he said. No, I replied, not I. Then you are not of the brotherhood. Will someone like kerosene? Then you are not of the brotherhood. How? And then Fortunato says, you are not one of the Masons. And we know that he's talking about the Freemasons. Okay? Yes, yes, I said. Yes, yes. Meaning, yes, I am one of the Masons. And then Fortunato says, you? Impossible. A Mason? A Mason, I replied. And then Fortunato asked for a sign to prove that you're a Mason. It is this, I answered, producing a trowel from beneath the folds of my jacket. Okay? Basically, they're arguing about whether Montresor could possibly be a Freemason, and Fortunato asks for a sign, and Montresor takes out basically a cement trowel, like a little shovel thing that you would use to lay bricks. This is ironic for two reasons. What are those reasons?
Because Montresor's like a brick mason.
Right.
And Fortunato's like a Freemason. So one's a brotherhood and one's like a career.
And how is he about to kill him?
With, doesn't he like trap him in?
He traps him in and then he walls him in with bricks. So basically, it's a symbol of one of the ways that Montresor is angry with Fortunato, because Fortunato is one of the Freemasons, which we talked about was kind of like high society, and Montresor feels less than. So when Fortunato asks for a sign, Montresor says, here's your sign. I'm about to wall you in with this bad boy. And it's ironic because he's literally showing him the murder weapon, but Fortunato has no idea. And it's also ironic because the Mason and the Freemason are the same name, but very different backgrounds. Okay?
I do have a question.
Yeah.
So, like, at the beginning when he talks about he's hurt me 1,000 times, like, do you think that he feels jealous and that's why he thinks he's hurting him or whatever?
Well, think about it this way. Whenever you dislike someone, okay? So if you hated me, okay, but you love Coach Stafford,
Right.
all right? Everything I say in your mind, you're going to twist to be negative.
Right.
So if you failed a test and I was like, Trev, man, you got to work hard.
Right.
You'd be like, man, that freaking Coach Wood. But you love Coach Stafford. And you're like, man, Coach, man, I bombed this test. And he's like, hey, buddy, you just got to work hard. And you're like, you're right, man. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, people you dislike, you make them worse in your mind. People that you like, you make better in your mind. Right? So for me,
Absolutely.
like, Liam can do no wrong. Right? He's got a snotty nose. I clean it. I was like, oh, man, he's so cute. But I see another snotty-nosed kid in Walmart, and I'm like, disgusting. You make things what you want them to be. Especially sociopaths, like I believe Montresor is. Sociopath, literally, by definition, they make things up in their mind and convince themselves that they're true. So you could make the argument that Fortunato didn't do anything wrong. Montresor just hates him. And so he makes it up in his mind that Fortunato sucks. I don't know.
Makes sense.
That's an interesting, point of discussion for sure. Okay, let's go down. Okay, so at this point on page 10, he's already got him kind of in there, into the little hole where he plans to wall him in, and he's putting the bricks on. And at the top of page 10, it says, "It was now midnight, and my task was drawing to a close. I had completed the 8th, the 9th, the 10th tier," meaning the level of bricks. "I had finished the portion of the last and the 11th. There remained but a single stone to be fitted and plastered in. I struggled with its weight. I placed it partially in its destined position, but now there came from out of the niche a low laugh that erected the hairs upon my head. It was succeeded by a sad voice, which I had difficulty in recognizing as that of the noble Fortunato. The voice said, 'Ha, ha, ha, he, he, a very good joke indeed. Excellent jest. We will have many a rich laugh about it all at the palazzo. Our wine.' 'The Amontillado,' I said. 'Yes, the Amontillado. But it is not getting late. Will they not be waiting at the palazzo, the Lady Fortunato and the rest? Let us be gone.' 'Yes,' I said, 'let us be gone.' Then, in italics, 'For the love of God, Montresor.' 'Yes,' I said, 'for the love of God.'" Okay, so what we got here is Fortunato trying to convince himself still that Montresor's kidding around with him, that he's joking. And then you've got it setting in. When you see those italics and it says, "For the love of God, Montresor," that's when he's starting to understand what's happening. Okay, that next paragraph. "No answer still. I thrust a torch through the remaining aperture and let it fall within. Then came forth in reply only a jingling of the bells. My heart grew sick. on account of the dampness of the catacombs. I hastened to make an end of my labor. I forced the last stone into its position. I plastered it up against the new masonry. I re-erected the old rampart of bones. For the half of a century, no mortal has disturbed them. In pace requiescat. Okay, so the part of this that we talked about a little bit already, but I want to say it for the people at home. Okay, when you see that line, my heart grew sick, and then that punctuation is called an M dash, which means a thought within a thought, okay? My heart grew sick on account of the dampness of the catacombs. His heart grew sick because when he heard the jingling of the bells, he was like, ooh, no turning back now. I just killed a man, right? And then he justifies it in his mind that he feels bad because they're in the catacombs and it's damp down there. And that really speaks to Montresor's makeup as a human, is that he's going to say or do whatever it takes to make himself feel okay. So, yeah, really interesting. Final thoughts, having sort of looked at the whole thing. Anybody got anything?